As I spend more time up here in the quarry, I get little insights into the day-to-day operations. There are a bunch of little clues around the quarry that I've found, which, you know, individually, a lot of them by themselves may not really mean too much, but, you know, looking around and putting together little pieces of the puzzle, I get a sense of, you know, how they operated this quarry, you know, and all this work taking place 100 years ago really baffles me because I only know a world with hydraulics, you know, my excavator sitting over there, and you know, all the operations today are generally larger scale, but you know, mechanization makes our modern life so easy. And so I find these little insights of how they got by, you know, without our modern standards of mechanization. And really I find myself pretty you know, pretty surprised, I guess. I think things were a lot more advanced, you know, between 1905 and into the 30s than I originally imagined. And so we'll walk around the quarry today and just, you know, take a peek as to what I've found, and yeah, see what's here. Because the grout piles are long and linear, going straight off the side of the hill, and because this piece of rail is right here, I believe that they formed these piles with carts on tracks. They'd fill up the carts and run them out to the end of the pile and dump it. And as the pile grew, the tracks would extend, creating these two lengthy grout piles. Standing in a little hot spot of metal pieces, there's a bunch of cable all over this hill. You know, keep finding that, and the novelty of finding that is kind of worn off. But I've also found some piping. I believe they use this piping to convey steam power and compressed air. There's one picture I've seen with the one picture I've seen has some steel, what looks to be piping, laying on the ground. And so I suspect a big part of the job was to just continuously reroute that piping so that it would, you know, so that they could run the rock drills wherever they were working. I also found a shiv, or a pulley wheel. You know, that was a neat find. It was broken, chipped. Maybe it chipped in service and they left it, or maybe when they dismantled the derrick, they just left it. You know, it just got left behind. Nice little bronze bearing on the inside of that. Pretty nice, you know, pretty nice piece of equipment, really. It'd be, you know, quite expensive to replace today. So I found a portion of this hill that, you know, that provides evidence that they used dynamite. There's a big bore that runs down through, you know, a piece of ledge. The bottom half of the ledge, well, the bottom half of this bore is exposed, but it, you know, it comes, you know, the top portion is intact. And had they split the block out of the mountain using feathers and wedges, that entire bore would have been exposed. But because they used dynamite, this lower portion of the ledge, you know, was blown off, and the upper portion was kept intact. So I'm in a different part of the quarry now, and behind me there's another big bore where presumably they used explosives. But what I find interesting about this one is that it's just one big drill hole through this entire boulder, this really big face. And I would have thought that they would have you know, drilled multiple holes to try to control the direction of the split more. But evidently, you know, they were trying to achieve some degree of economy. Perhaps it took a really long time to drill the hole, or perhaps the dynamite or whatever explosives were, you know, really expensive, and, you know, try to be as conservative as possible. But it's another little interesting thing that I found. So I'm a little further away from my quarry, closer to the edge of my property, and I'm standing in what I believe would have been like an exploratory test pit. There's a bunch of splitting activity that took place here, but the material seems to be, you know, here. They didn't seem to remove too much of the material, and it's not deep or doesn't go far into the mountain. So obviously a small amount of activity took place. I suspect they were just kicking tires, trying to get a sense of what's here before moving equipment. And then perhaps the business folded before they got to do that. Or perhaps the stone's no good. So right behind me is this big thing. I don't know what it is. It's right on the very edge of the landing, and I suspect it's a boiler. For a while I was wondering if it was the you know, the carriage or the cart that they carry the grout pieces off to, but I've you know, it's double walled. Looks like there, you know, there's accommodations for a sealed door on the front, and is also some type of valve or a pair of valves on the back, which suggests that it might have been a pressurized vessel of some type. It's really hard saying because the top has been cut off, and so it just sits here. I mean, I don't even believe that it was here during the operation. I expect that it was placed here after the fact, and it has since been used as a fire pit, and I've used it myself as a fire pit. Just a big old cast iron piece, blacksmithed together. So behind me is the neatest thing in this quarry. It's an old boiler. You know, it looks like the front end of a steam locomotive was just cut off. It's just left up here, right in the woods. It's at the top of the landing. I don't know why the boiler would have been at the top of the property. I can't imagine the logistics of getting this thing up here. It's just a fascinating old piece of equipment that is gonna live out the rest of its days up here, I guess. So I hiked up to the top of the quarry. I'm at the uppermost rim, and I'm pretty high actually. I'm sitting on the edge of a pretty good ledge. It's kind of scary actually. I mean, you know, it's like a 20-foot drop. But you know, this little bench that I'm sitting on right now has some drill marks in it, and so obviously, you know, they were cutting up here, and because I'm furthest up, you know, I wonder if this is where they started their operations. Maybe they left off, I don't know, but it's a really significant crater that sits below me. You get up here and you get a real sense of how much material they pulled out of here in 25 or so years.